The Lord of the Rings has a rich and beloved cast of characters. There are really so many to choose from to be your favorite. From the wise quirks of Gandalf the Grey to the humble strength of Aragorn, or the deep devotion of the hobbit gardener Sam Gamgee, or even the tragic resilience of Eowyn the Shield Maiden. There are just so many good characters to choose from. But for me, there has always been one character who has stood out among the rest, and that would have to be Boromir. And no, it's not because of this. One does not simply walk into Mordor. Nope, that's not it. As iconic as that is. But there's something about Boromir that has always resonated with me ever since I was a small child. He was one of the characters that stayed with me. A character that meant something. Even if I was too small to understand why. But as I've grown, I've come to better understand why it is that I love this captain of Gondor. When we first meet Boromir, we are met with a man of great stature. Not just in his height, but in his presence. He is a renowned captain, a defender of Osgiliath, and he is a beacon of hope to all of Gondor. He is a man driven by purpose, seeking counsel in Rivendell after he and his brother Faramir received dreams of Narsil, the sword that was broken. And Boromir, being the protective brother that he is, took Faramir's place on the journey to the Elf Lord's house. And side note, does anyone kind of pick up some similarities between Boromir and the beginning of King Saul's story in the Old Testament? I might cover that in a future video when I do my character analysis of Boromir, because if you didn't know, I am currently working on a Christian character analysis for each character in The Lord of the Rings, at least the main characters. So, stay tuned for that. Now, back to the topic at hand. One thing that I think many people overlook regarding Boromir is that he traveled to Rivendell by himself. I want you to stop and think about that. All of the hobbits traveled together. The dwarves, Gimli and Glóin, traveled together. And the elves traveled in different delegations based on where they were coming from in Middle-earth. But Boromir, the representative of Gondor, traveled alone. For 110 days in the wilderness, traveling to a location that he wasn't even sure if it existed. During this 110-day journey, he likely fought off wolves and orcs and who knows what else. He is completely roughing it in the woods, and again, he's on this journey by himself to go find Rivendell, which as far as they knew in Gondor didn't even exist anymore, or was likely a fairy tale. In my opinion, this is quite the epic feat that is completely missing in the movies. But let's return to Boromir, the man that we first meet in Rivendell. In Boromir, we also see a man deeply in love with his people and the city of Minas Tirith, proud of his heritage and their defense against evil. In the chapter The Council of Elrond, we read the following: "Believe not that in the land of Gondor the blood of Númenor is spent, nor all its pride and dignity forgotten. By our valor the wild folk of the east are still restrained, and the terror of Morgul kept at bay. And thus alone are peace and freedom maintained in the lands behind us, bulwark of the west." When Boromir arrives in Rivendell, he shares news that much of the world has forgotten, that Gondor is still holding off the forces of evil. And Sauron, the very threat that they are all discussing in safety here in Rivendell, is being held back and restrained by Gondor's forces. But as proud and as brave as Boromir and his people are, we ultimately see through Boromir's character just how corruptible men are, and we see Boromir's intentions regarding the ring. Why should we not think that the great ring has come into our hands to serve us in the very hour of need? Wielding it, the free lords of the free. Wait, stop. Okay, I'm a big Tolkien fan, but did he seriously just say the free lords of the free? Like, come on, my man. I'm pretty sure that somewhere in the editing process, C.S. Lewis had to tell you to rewrite that part, right? Anyway, let's get back to it. Wielding it, the free lords of the free may surely defeat the enemy. That is what he most fears, I deem. Boromir does not see the danger of the ring, but he hopes to use it to defend Gondor. And this hope is blinding him to the larger problem at hand. You see, what is so brilliant about the way that Tolkien wrote The Ring is that it takes your own desires and uses them against you. When Boromir is tempted, it's because he wants to use the ring to defend his city. When Gandalf is tempted, it's because he wants to use it for good. And when Sam is tempted, it's because he wants to use it to build a massive garden in Mordor. No, I'm not kidding. And this is often how we are tempted by sin in our own lives. By our own desires, we are led astray. But each one is tempted when he is drawn away by his own desires and enticed. Then, when desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is full grown, brings forth death. In the same way, the ring uses your own desires against you. And in Boromir's case, the ring seeks to consume him under the guise of defending the city and people he loves most. What seems like a noble act on the surface, but with Boromir, if he were given the ring, over time his desire to defend his city for good would slowly corrupt him and ultimately lead to its destruction. And this is where we begin to see the flaws in Boromir, the cracks in his pride. Though we also see throughout the tale many of Boromir's great qualities as well. His deep care for the halflings, specifically Merry and Pippin. And especially in the books, we see a great warrior who willingly puts himself on the line for the sake of the Fellowship numerous times. Trudging through snow on Caradhras to make a path for everyone else. Blowing the horn of Gondor, which causes the Balrog to take a momentary step back in fear. And of course his final stand in defense of Merry and Pippin. But we'll discuss that one more later. And I know that it's easy to look at Boromir through a negative lens, but I want us to take a quick look at this very brief line from Aragorn. Therefore, Boromir will also be in company. He is a valiant man. This is such a brief line that it is easy to pass over, but I want you to stop and think about something. Aragorn and Boromir have not met until this point. Aragorn has spent much of his life living in the wilderness, and yet, despite that, he knows enough about Boromir to confidently make the claim that he is a valiant man. Personally, I think that speaks volumes to who Boromir is, and his character will only show more and more as we go through the Fellowship of the Ring. It shall not take long to see a glimpse of Boromir's strength either. For as they climbed up Caradhras, we see his perseverance. As I said earlier, Aragorn and Boromir at one point on the mountain are carving out a path in the snow by brute force. They have made an easier way for the rest of the company, and when they return, they lead the Fellowship onward, and Boromir says the following. "Have hope," said Boromir. "I am weary, but I still have some strength left, and Aragorn too. We will bear the little folk." Boromir has been hiking up a perilous mountain in a snowstorm, digging through the snow with his hands, hiking all day long, and now he's going to carry the little ones to relieve them from their plight in the snow. And what about the moment in the mines of Moria when the company is faced with the great demon, the Balrog? Gandalf tells the company to flee, but Aragorn and Boromir do not initially heed this command, and they stand right behind Boromir, facing the great demon before them. Now, realistically, as great as Aragorn and Boromir are, what can they really do against the Balrog? The answer is nothing. But nonetheless, they put their lives on the line, standing between their enemy and the fate of the quest. You see, no matter the peril, there has not been an instance where Boromir has been unwilling to defend those he cares about. Whether he faced wolves in the mountain, orcs in Moria, or a great Balrog, he was ready for the fight. And his courage came from a deep care for those around him. "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me." But now that we have looked at Boromir's strength, I want to cover the terrible moment that we all know is coming. The moment of Boromir's greatest sin. As the Fellowship rests at Amon Hen, the ring-bearer decides to wander alone, knowing what he must do, though the courage for action still eludes him. And as he seeks solitude and time to think, he becomes aware that he is not in fact alone, but has been followed. Boromir, driven by concern for the Hobbit, a concern that I think was genuine, though corrupted by the ring, follows after the Hobbit, though his heart is not prepared to resist the coming temptation of the ring. It is here where Boromir wishes to help Frodo, to take Frodo, or rather the ring, by a different road to Gondor. To take this weapon to his people and to save the White City. But Frodo can sense there is something foul in the air about Boromir, that he is not entirely himself. For the warning in Frodo's heart was true. Boromir now asks for the ring, that he may see it, possessed by the desire to use the ring, that he might command his city. That perhaps Aragorn, no, Boromir himself, would wield the ring and bring his people to victory. Come, come, my friend, said Boromir in a softer voice. Why not get rid of it? Why not be free of your doubt and fear? You can lay the blame on me if you will. You can say that I was too strong and took it by force. For I am too strong for you, halfling, he cried. And suddenly he sprang over the stone and leaped at Frodo. His fair and pleasant face was hideously changed. A raging fire was in his eyes. Sadly, do these words not sound like the sour lies of the devil himself? It is here where Boromir's humanity is revealed, his desire for power exposed, just like every other man. His moment of weakness. Driven by wicked intentions, he charges Frodo, but Frodo escapes, leaving Boromir alone to curse Frodo and all halflings, until he finally comes to his senses and realizes his great mistake. But it is now too late. The fellowship is broken. But you see, it is this moment of Boromir's greatest weakness that makes me adore him so. He is flawed and imperfect. And I would argue that he is likely more flawed than any other hero in Tolkien's story. Though his mistake is brief, it is monumental in scope. For in Boromir we can see how the reputation of a man can be ruined by one foul act. Boromir, the man whom Aragorn called valiant before leaving Rivendell. Boromir, the man who put the safety of the hobbits before himself. Boromir, the man who stood between danger and the fate of the quest and the ring. This Boromir was tempted in his weakest moment, and he failed. And it is here where I shall now turn to the film, though I will not show any footage for copyright reasons. Boromir is now driven by his grief, knowing that he has doomed the Fellowship. But he cannot grieve for long as the Uruk-hai now descend upon Amon Hen in search of the hobbits. It is here where Boromir makes his final stand. As his enemies charge down on Merry and Pippin, Boromir once again runs into the fray to defend those he loves. With sword drawn and shield at his side, he fights off dozens of orcs on his own, slaying many on the field of war. It is here where one of my favorite moments in all of Lord of the Rings takes place. Boromir pulls out the Horn of Gondor, and he lets its low drone echo through the forest. Many assume here that Boromir is calling for help, that he is being overrun and in need of aid, that he is hoping Aragorn will soon arrive and fight by his side. But I do not believe this is at all what Boromir is doing. On the contrary, I believe that right here Boromir recognizes his wrong. He knows that he has driven away Frodo, frightening the very hope of the world. The fate of one small hobbit and the ring, and therefore the fate of the world, is now in danger because of his actions. And so what does Boromir do? He blows the Horn of Gondor. Every orc for miles will hear this call. They come charging towards Boromir, bent on his destruction and the capturing of Merry and Pippin, the hobbits they believe they are searching for. And because Boromir does this, he buys Frodo the time he needs to escape. They are no longer looking for a single hobbit running away. They are charging straight for the captain of Gondor. And as Boromir fights off the hordes of orcs, he is struck by a black arrow, a wound that would kill any man. But Boromir does not fall now. He rises and continues to fight, slaying more orcs until he is struck by yet another arrow, this time bringing the great warrior to his knees. But as he looks at the hobbits before him, many things cross his mind. Firstly, he sees Merry and Pippin, the hobbits he cares deeply for, and he wants to defend them. But also in them he sees Frodo. He sees his mistake. He sees his failure. And with that he rises once more and continues to fell his foes, the slain orcs now in the dozens around him. until a third and final arrow pierces him, this time driving him to his knees for good. The hobbits are captured, and Boromir, the great captain of Gondor, is defeated. But this is not yet his final act, for when Aragorn finds him lying on the ground, he confesses his sin, that he tried to take the ring from Frodo, and that the hobbits Merry and Pippin are now taken by the orcs, which very soon will give Aragorn a very clear direction after the battle. And it is here that Boromir finally takes his last breath. Greater love has no one than this, than to lay down one's life for his friends. Boromir laid down his life for those he loved, for his friends, demonstrating the single greatest act of love possible. And I can't help but point out that at least in the movies, Boromir is pierced by 3 arrows, just like Jesus is pierced by 3 nails. The departure of Boromir is not just a tragic death, it is a sacrifice. A sacrifice which points us back to the greatest sacrifice of all time, the sacrifice of Jesus Christ on the cross, who paid for the sins of you and I that we might live. You see, what I love about Boromir and stories in general is that they are a shadow of the truth. Boromir is not just a fictional character. He is a signpost and a symbol that reminds us that we are in need of a savior. And that savior is Jesus Christ. And unlike Boromir, Jesus did not stay in the grave, but he rose again the 3rd day, defeating death and sin once and for all. The greatest act of love ever committed was on display on a cross 2,000 years ago. And my friend, it is my hope and prayer that if you do not know Jesus, that you would surrender your life to him today. Recognize that in a manner far, infinitely greater than Boromir, he stood between you and your enemies, the enemies of sin and death. He was pierced by 3 nails and died to give you life. My friend, the true King of men, Jesus Christ, is ready with open arms to welcome you, no matter what kind of mess you are currently in. So today, come to Jesus Christ and acknowledge him as your captain and your king. Amen. Until next time, my friends, please take care, God bless, and we will see you soon. Adios.